Hello and welcome to Smart Money Simplified with Brent Mekosh. Brent, what's going on, my man?
We got less than 2 weeks to the end of the year, at least as we're recording this. This one probably won't drop until January, but I'm just kind of amazed that 2022 is almost in the rearview mirror. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's like a snowball rolling downhill fast.
Really
It's
fast.
yeah, really fast. I don't know how it goes this fast every year, but yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited about the fact that you've got a guest from across the pond today.
I do. Yeah.
And yeah, this is gonna be a great interview.
I think it's a good one and it's timely as well. I've got Ian Mills with me, and he's the CEO and founding director of Transform Performance International. And they're a
Hmm.
global advisory firm that offers solutions to clients' business performance challenges. And what we want to talk about, he's written several books. I just received this one yesterday. Looking very forward to reading it. It's the Salesperson's Secret Code. And I think that, the mindset and the belief systems that cause people to be successful as salespeople really translate into all areas of life. My father had a comment that he made to me and Ian when we spoke about a week or so ago, echoed that. And he said, everybody is selling something. It doesn't matter if a doctor's trying to sell you whatever he's trying to do. Everybody is selling something. And I think that sometimes sales can be viewed as a four-letter word. I've never viewed it to be that way, but I think that there's people that are top performers in sales, and I think if they're if they're top performers in sales in one industry, I think that translates to almost any industry, and I think it translates to all areas of your life. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. And Ian, it's evening, it's late evening for you in the United Kingdom. I'm taking you away from a nice glass of wine to have this conversation with me. So thank you for joining me today.
That's quite all right. It's actually it's late afternoon, so I'm on the downhill slope to that said glass of wine. So I really appreciate your comments. And by the way, couldn't agree more. I mean, there's a famous or well-known US author called Dan Pink, and at the very beginning of one of his books, he makes the statement that everybody sells. So frankly, whether you're a parent trying to convince your kids to go to bed on time, or you're a funeral director trying to sell your services, it doesn't really matter what is on your calling card. We all have to influence others towards a particular direction or destination.
Very much so. And I think that and there's a difference between influencing people towards a direction or something that might be useful and beneficial for them, versus the idea that people have of a salesman in their mind can sometimes tend toward maybe the bad experience of somebody that was sold something that they didn't necessarily need. But I think that the best salespeople that I have met are people that are almost evangelical about what it is in terms of good or service that they're offering the public. And has that been your experience as well?
Um, Absolutely. So the difference in somebody who's got great skill and talent who manipulates you versus somebody who's got great skill and talent who helps add value is centered on your morals, your values, and the ethics by which you operate. So it's like anything in life, you can misuse talent for the bad, or you can use it for the good. In my humble opinion, in the corporate world and the business world, most people are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Everybody comes to work wanting to do a good job. It doesn't mean they always do a good job. Many of us might pull the wrong lever or engage in the wrong way or antagonize somebody. But we all came to work wanting to do a great job, wanting to make a difference, wanting to add value, wanting to do something positive. So the whole kind of psychology of trust and engagement and selling and leading and all of those things is fascinating.
So what have you, this book is incredibly well researched, and I'm looking forward to over the next week or so spending some more time with it. But what are some of the common traits that you have found with people that are top performers in their fields?
Okay, so it's worth just positioning what the book is about. You touched on it a moment ago. What it centers on, or what the research centers on, are the belief systems that cause people to behave in the way they behave. Now, this is really important. So if you think about entrepreneurs, salespeople, leaders, the psychology goes as follows. The beliefs you hold cause you to behave in the way you behave, and the way you behave will cause you to be the success that you are or you potentially are not. So if as an individual you want to up your game, or if you're a leader and you want to up the game of your people, it is potentially more transformational to focus on the deep-rooted internal beliefs rather than the skill, the knowledge, the process, the method. It's not to say that those things don't have a place, but they're easier to fix. So if you think about skill, skill is developed through relentless practice. So we can all do that. Knowledge is acquired through studying. Developing the right mindset and the right attitude and the right perspective is really difficult, because quite often we grow up developing that mindset and that perspective, and to change those deep-rooted views and perspectives is really quite difficult. So when we did the research, given the fact that I've been in the business world now for over 40 years, I said this slightly arrogantly. I thought I knew what the answer was, but my academic advisor said, when you do research, you can't start by believing you know what the answer is. You know, you've got to do the blank piece of paper research to evidence whatever the philosophy is you're trying to explore. So what we didn't know when we started the research is there a different mindset between the top performers and the rest. But what I can tell you, having done over 1,000 interviews and gathered in the millions of data points, is that there absolutely is a secret code, and there is an underlying deep-rooted belief system that separates the top performers from the rest. Now, I'll give you one minor example, because that was your question. So one of the things that we looked at was the degree to which a salesperson believes that they are in control of their destiny or in control of their success. And what we looked at is two sub-measures that we happen to call hero and victim, and we call those journey motivators. So a hero is somebody who believes that regardless of the economic environment, interest rates, barriers, problems, COVID, all of those things, they will find a way around it, they'll find a way over it, they'll find a way under it. Whereas a victim is somebody who's always got a reason why they can't deliver, why they can't hit their quota, why they can't achieve their goals and metrics. What was really interesting about the research is even the best performers had a little bit of victim behavior, but an awful lot of hero behavior. But of course, as you would imagine, the poorer performers are far more victim-like and less hero-like. So that's just one measure that distinguishes the best from the rest, if that makes sense. So I quite often think about this like the ingredients in a cake. Or if you think about, okay, let's take a US. You take Coca-Cola. We all read the back of the can. We know what goes in it, but we can't replace the taste. So the secret code. The measures are fairly obvious, but what isn't obvious is what's the optimum balance? What's the trade-off that makes it taste perfect, or in the world of selling, is likely to give you the success that you deserve?
So you talk about those underlying values and the hero versus the victim, and that makes a whole lot of sense. What were some of the drivers, though, that were there common traits of the people that were heroes and not victims? What got them there, or is there not, was there a roadmap to get to that higher place?
Look, there's a whole series of underlying behaviors that are more likely to emanate in a person becoming hero-like in their mindset. So you tend to find that those who are insatiably curious, so those people who want to learn, who want to understand, who want to unpack things, who want to get to the truth, they're more likely to have an open-minded mindset as to where I can get to. So I'll give you a real example. Happens to be out of London, happens to be pre-pandemic, but I ran a conference for around about 100 salespeople, and one of my early questions to the audience is, who is the top performer in the room? Now, here's a cultural difference. Because it was in the UK, nobody put their hand in the air. If it was in New York, I'd probably get 15 people with their hand in the air. Right? Okay, so there's a difference. Anyway, one of the leaders pointed me at the top performer. So I went over to him. I was fully mic'd up. I went over to him in the corner. And my question to him was, how many of the other 99 people in the room have banged on your door in the last year to buy you a coffee to find out how you became the #1 performer? Now, what happened, unsurprisingly, is he went very quiet. And what generally that means is I don't quite know how to answer the question. I don't really want to embarrass my colleagues. But eventually, through the use of silence, he said, well, actually, I don't think anyone did. Now, let's take that a stage further. Why did the 99 not do that? Well, the reason that most of them wouldn't have done that is their brain will have been saying he hit lucky, he had the best accounts, it won't happen next year, he was helped by his manager, he got more leads than everybody else got, and therefore they won't bother to show curiosity, they won't bother to dig deep, they won't bother to explore, and therefore what will happen the following year is he will be in the top 3, and they will be where they were in the previous year too. Um, so, so that's a mindset example. So if you believe that engaging with top performers, if you believe that being curious, if you believe that being brave is likely to uncover aspects of a top performer that you can copy and paste into your world, you will be correct. I think it was Henry Ford that once said, if you believe you can or you can't, you will be correct.
Absolutely. And I do think that there, in every business, there's a desire in some cases to reinvent the wheel. And I know that early on, I've been in this end of the business that I'm in now since 2007. And early on in 2007, 2008, I remember I wanted to do things my way, and it was going to be a completely different way, I guess, of running a business. And I very quickly, in going into the great financial crisis, you discovered that, there's people that have come before you that have already done all the hard work. And so you can take that accumulated knowledge that they have built up, and then you can put your own personal flavor on it. But there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. And
Absolutely.
is that something that you see embedded in almost every industry where you have people that's all right, let me phrase the question in a more simple way. Why are we so hard on ourselves and not taking what people before us have learned and applying in our own lives? You always see that. It can be in
Well,
physical fitness, it can be in sales, it can be in anything.
yeah, look, it's a great question, and that's what makes the world in which we're all operating so interesting, because it's the psychology of human behavior, which frustrates so many of us. And by the way, don't see me as perfect. And I often use sport as a metaphor. Now, it doesn't matter whether your listeners play golf or not; they will have probably held a golf club at some point in their life, and I'm yet to meet anyone who's ever perfected golf, but that's what makes it so interesting. So sales, leadership, engagement, building trust is similar to golf. Nobody will ever perfect it. We will all get it wrong, but you can systemize it. You can become better. You can become scientific. You can be curious. You can be brave, and you can fundamentally change your performance if you're up for it. And that's the real thing, the degree to which you are up for it. So do you convince yourself you can't, or do you convince yourself you can? And it's not a linear black and white thing. It's not about I believe I can weave magic and therefore I'll flick a switch and tomorrow it might happen. It might take you 2 years, 3 years, 5 years to get to your desired state. But all of us can get there, whatever that might be, whether that's becoming happier, whether that's running a marathon, whether that's becoming a CEO, whatever our goal and dream and ambition is, every one of us can get there, providing we believe we can get there. And then as a consequence, we start to behave in a way that is most likely to get us there. So modeling others, learning and developing, being open-minded, being brave, being curious, all of those kind of things are more likely to get us there than they're not.
It's a really fantastic book that I read maybe a year or so ago. Author's name is escaping me, but it's called Atomic Habits. And his theory, have you read the book as well?
I haven't, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, very good. Because his whole theory is that, to cause massive change in your life and increase the performance in all areas of your life, most people all of a sudden, if they want to get in shape, They go from not running at all and they go out and try to run 10 miles. They blow themselves up and they're back on the couch again the next day. Where his thing is, you make these small, minor, incremental changes on a day-to-day basis. Minor thing, like maybe you walk 6,000 steps instead of 5,500 steps. And if you do that, those small changes every day, the results at the end of 1 year, 5 years, like you're saying, end up being incredibly dramatic. So in terms of with your experience working with top performers in the sales world, are these people that did, it's a two-part question. Were they born with a unique skill set and an ability to connect with people? Because that's really, I think, what salesmanship is all about.
Okay,
Or
so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you
No,
there.
no, no. Yeah.
But I really like that whole sort of positioning of, are you born like it or are you made like
Yes.
it? So in my opinion, there are some people who are, as very young people, naturally talented. So we see that in the world of sport, for example. There are some people that are developed to become brilliant. Now, I know this is not a US sport, but let me take soccer for a moment, given the fact we've just ended the World Cup. The two
Exciting
best
game
players.
too. It was an amazing
Yeah,
final.
right. Okay. So there are two. The two top players in the world are Messi and Ronaldo. So most people who follow soccer or football, whichever label we'd like to put on it, would say that Messi was born brilliant and Ronaldo made himself brilliant. So Ronaldo made himself brilliant through training, modeling others, studying others, going that extra mile. Whereas I think Messi was more naturally brilliant, and you see that in golf, you see that in business. So I think that's incredibly encouraging for anyone listening to this call, because it's essentially saying it doesn't matter what your start point is, you can develop yourself to become something actually you never imagined you could become.
Can you give me an example of one of the most transformational people that you've seen in this world, where through your work that you've done with companies, where you've seen somebody completely turn around their performance?
Okay, but I'm gonna let me give you an individual that we so actually I wrote a following book after sales called The Leader Secret Code. One of the things that we've done in both of those books, apart from the academic research, we've modeled exceptional people. And in fact, let me give you two examples. So there's a lady in America called Erica Feidner. I found her because Inc.com, in an article, acknowledged that she is one of the top 5 salespeople of all time. And I think, by recollection, 2 of the other 5 were dead. So she was one of the few that was available. Erica, at the time we interviewed her, sold Steinway pianos. So the most expensive pianos in the world. So, if you're Elton John, you play a Steinway piano. Erica sold something in the order of 20 times the number of pianos per year that the average Steinway piano seller sold globally. So there's an exceptional individual. So we interviewed her because she exemplified much of the research that we did. But I'm going to give you one thing that was quite magical about her. So she did not believe that she was a salesperson. She believed that she was a piano matchmaker. So she saw her dream, or her job, of making the dreams of her potential customers come true. So if you are a non-playing individual who would love to be able to play a grand piano and invite all of your friends around to your home for a social occasion, she would move mountains and potentially spend years finding you the right piano, helping you learn how to play, helping you achieve your outcome. And so that's about your identity. So that's about how you see yourself. So if I see myself as the piano matchmaker, I'm going to behave in a way that is congruent with it. If I see myself as a salesperson, I'm probably likely to get dragged into price and cost and a transactional type relationship. So that's a good example. I'm going to give you another example. I'm going to give you a leader, and it's one of the leaders we interviewed in the Secret Code, and he's a really interesting man. Okay, so he's from the UK. He was brought up in a very poor environment. some of your readers might not be familiar with the name I'm about to give you, but he once told me that his father was the South of the River franchise of the Cray brothers. So the Cray brothers are gangsters. Anyway, when his father was in prison, his mother escaped to South Africa with him as a child. When he was in South Africa, he said he was the luckiest man in the world because he got shot at 10 times and only hit twice. Anyway, that's a start in life. Eventually, he became the CEO of his own company. He was a very sales-oriented guy. He was awarded in the UK an OBE. He's a man in his late 50s. In the last 12 months, he ran 40 marathons on 40 consecutive days to raise in excess of $100,000 for charity. So why am I saying that? I'm saying that because here is somebody who started with not a lot of support, not a lot of help, with a poor education, poor role models, but actually was able to set his goals high and over a period of time do some remarkable things. So if you just take the 40 marathons in 40 days, again, he didn't flick a switch and do those tomorrow. That would have taken 3 years of training, honing his strength, his fitness, his emotional resilience, his mindset, his state to be able to pull that off. When, we all know if we're doing something like that and you wake up in the middle of the night and think, why am I running another marathon? Yeah. So, there are so many great examples of people who've done exceptional things. And it starts with their deep-rooted belief that they can pull it off.
Where does that come from? Is there a
So,
common denominator for that?
yes, look, that's a great question. So if you take him, that won't have come from his upbringing. That would have come from his life's experiences. It would have come from exposing himself to others who are successful. It will come from admiring others. So if you think about somebody maybe who's in the 30s or 40s, who's stuck in a rut. If I were their coach, or if I were running a development program, what you can't do is you can't tell somebody to change their deep-rooted belief systems. But what you can do is you can expose people to the art of the possible. You can expose people to other people who've achieved things when actually their talent isn't as good as them. You can encourage them. You can build their self-esteem. You can change their confidence. You can encourage them. Oh, and by the way, you can also provoke them, because sometimes provocation gets people to try things that they've never tried before, and then all of a sudden they find out they quite like it and they're quite good at it.
Yeah,
So there's a whole series of techniques by which you can get people to change that perspective.
It's interesting though, because you talk about, you can show somebody maybe that's struggling in a specific area. You can show somebody that's done what at least they're saying they want to achieve, and hopefully they'll admire that and they'll seek to replicate that in themselves. But is it possible? I think that some people, I've met people as you have, that have been brought up in, like you had mentioned here, in the most terrible circumstances, and yet they've gone on to achieve something absolutely incredible. Even Joe Rogan, I think, in his podcast has said several times, some of the most interesting people that he's ever interviewed are people that had terrible backgrounds, people that had to overcome these enormous obstacles.
Yeah.
But what's the difference between the person that resigns themselves, that they are a product of their history and their environment, and the person that, despite everybody telling them what they can't do, because the world is full of people telling you what you can't do, and in spite of that, is able to overcome that and achieve and greatness can be relative. Greatness for somebody that's never gotten off the couch can be walking 5K, but what I guess I'm trying to get at the bottom of that, because I don't know the answer to that. I don't know where that internal drive comes from.
Look, I don't think there's an easy answer to it. Look, all I've observed, given I'm now a man in my 60s, so I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, is that sometimes people just simply make small choices that aren't the best choice. So they're more comfortable. It's easier. I mean, look, a minor example. We're heading towards the end of the year. There will be many people that will start 2023 with a New Year's resolution,
Yep.
and that will be to get fitter, to lose weight, to achieve something. Um, the the research that goes into that says that if you share your goal with other people, you are significantly more likely to achieve it than you are if you keep it to yourself.
Right.
So there's a little message. If you internalize the fact that you want to make more money, be happier, achieve more things, you're less likely to do that than if you publicize it. So there's a little message that actually says often people need to be pushed, provoked, made to feel a little bit uncomfortable, um, and that will drive them towards making small decisions that are better decisions that then lead to a better outcome. And when they get that better outcome, that then will become, potentially a self-fulfilling prophecy that fuels their future. But it is really, really difficult. And, like you, I know many families where, it doesn't matter whether it's sons or daughters, but one of them is massively successful and another one isn't.
Same
And they came
environment, same
Yeah,
parents, same
same
everything.
parents, same upbringing, all,
Mhm.
all of those kind of things. And actually quite often you know that they have the same innate talent, but one has just made better choices,
In some
you
cases, I
know.
would argue that some of the people that I've seen that have been massively successful have less talent in terms of less raw intellectual
Yeah,
horsepower, less talent,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they've had to overcome different challenges, and that's made them almost better in every way versus the person that was given
Tell
and
me
or
about it.
born with these incredible gifts, but has never
No.
utilized them to their
No, tell
full
me
potential.
about it. And I think if you were to analyze that, what you might say is just if you were to trade one thing off as against another, have less intellect and more bravery. Oh,
Yes,
all of a sudden that'll move you forward. Um, have less knowledge but more curiosity. That will get
that's a
you to a
great line.
better one of the leaders I interviewed had a fantastic line, and he was a military leader, and he got in the UK what is called a military cross for, um, it's an award for extreme bravery in war situations, and he uses a phrase that says, "Be interested, not interesting." That's really powerful from a leadership and a sales point of view, because again, that's saying ask people questions, be curious. You don't have to know everything and tell everybody your wisdom, because your wisdom may be irrelevant to them. Show an interest in them. Focus on other people. So again, that means you don't have to have a master's degree in whatever the subject is. You just have to show sufficient curiosity, have done your homework, have done your research, and have an ability to engage.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. And you look at the people that I think are that do most of the listening in many cases. The other people walk away from that transaction that they had, not even a business transaction, but that connection that they had, and they feel great because they've actually feel
Yeah.
like for the first time they've been heard. I want to
Yes.
go. I want to go back to our Steinway sales lady for a second because you said something that really resonated with me, and in terms of she viewed herself as a piano matchmaker, so that there's a deep the purpose was not her going in and selling X number of pianos because ultimately at the end of that, who cares? The purpose was connecting people with something that was going to lead to a beautiful experience in their life or their family or something like that. And I've been thinking about this and I don't know how to properly articulate it, but I think that the people that I have found across all industries that have been massively successful, they have a deep sense of purpose with that. There's something beyond the numbers. I mean, I'll use my wife as an example. So my wife's brilliant. She's chair of the Department of Development for Mayo Clinic for the West region. So she runs all the fundraising for the West region for Mayo Clinic. She crushes it. She's just been phenomenal. She's been in this role for about 6 years now. When you ask her if she was sitting right here, she's also a total hypochondriac. We joke about it all the time. And she believes in the organization, but she also believes that she's bringing in these dollars for Mayo Clinic to solve cure diseases that now it'll be one less thing that she'll have to worry about when she gets older. You know what I mean? So there's a deep sense of purpose behind matching people with what their priorities might be and a mission or a goal that Mayo Clinic has. And other people I've met that have been extremely successful have that same sense of purpose. Is that, do you find that as well in your research, that there's a purpose beyond?
Absolutely. So before I wrote the Salesperson Secret Code, actually, I was going to write the Entrepreneur's Secret Code. And I won't bore you with the background of what got that started, but I interviewed quite a number of successful entrepreneurs. And what was really interesting was that none of them talked about doing what they did in order to make money. None of them talked about what they were doing to make money, and I gave them lots of opportunities to say that, because I almost wanted them to declare that as a goal, as an objective. All of them talked about doing what they did because they were in love with it, they were passionate about it, they were energized about it, and because of that, that meant they became very good at it, and because they became very good at it, they then happened to make quite a bit of money. So it's a sequencing. So it's almost like if you are if you're advising somebody, somebody who wants to become an entrepreneur, absolutely the advice has to be to find something that you love, find something that you are passionate about, something that energizes you, and then become world class at it, and focus on becoming world class, and then as a consequence, the money will flow. And I've got a feeling the famous Steve Jobs, when he did his talk at Stanford University, was guiding the graduating students there. I forget the exact phrase, but find a job that you love. And I thought that was quite profound, and I think incredibly important in my humble opinion. We all need to be realistic. So I mentioned Dan Pink earlier. He wrote a book called Drive, which is about the surprising truth about what motivates us. And his research suggests that money doesn't motivate anyone. But there is a threshold. So we all need to earn enough money to buy a home, buy a car, educate our children, go on holiday. But once we get beyond that, actually the evidence suggests that if we get paid more money, we'll deliver less output. So if you are that person, or you're leading that person, you've got to find out what is it that gets that person out of bed in the morning. What is it that will energize them, motivate them? And there's a lovely phrase which doesn't originate from me. You need to understand what makes their heart sing. Understand what makes their heart sing. And that's a better question than what are your goals and ambitions? Because what often happens when you have a conversation with somebody, if you ask the goals and ambitions, you tend to get a corporate answer. If you ask what is it that makes your heart sing, people often find that a little bit difficult to answer immediately, because they've really got to think quite deeply about what that might be and what that might feel like and what that might be like. But as soon as you begin to understand that, then whoever you are, whether you're an advisor, whether you're a leader, or whether you're a salesperson, you can then begin to help them get more of that.
That's that's an interesting thing. There's a man named Barry Garapedian. He's a Morgan Stanley advisor out in LA, actually, I met several years ago. One of the top in the entire Morgan Stanley system. And I was fortunate enough to have lunch with him probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I asked him, why have you been so successful at what you've done? Because the guy's been absolutely incredible, and he has been for years. And he says, I find their emotional point and I meet them there. And it sounds like almost that's, that rhymes a little bit with what makes your heart sing. So he's finding with these people what it is that makes that drives them, that pushes them forward.
Yes.
Now let me ask you this. This could be a tougher question, but do you find it? I think there's a lot of people out there now, for sure in the last couple of years, that I think feel fairly lost and without purpose. And it somewhat seems to me to be increasing. Would you agree with that or no?
I'm not sure. I've not really thought about that. They may well be. I wonder. What I do see is people questioning why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a similar thing. But is that about, do I want to get away from the pain of what I'm doing, or do I want to go towards something I would love to do? And has the environment driven more people to think about that? So for example, if you take the UK, there's a momentum for people to move out of London into rural communities. There's a momentum for people working at home more than working in an office. So maybe the catalyst for that is people are feeling a little bit lost, a little bit directionless, wanting to find what the new model is to get what they might want. And there does seem to be some data that progressively more people are unhappy in a work environment. Now that's always quite interesting, because that then says, well, okay, so is your motivation to escape from what you don't like, or is your motivation to go towards what you do like? And probably my fear, and I can't back this up with any data, is too many people want to get away from what they don't like, but they haven't worked out what they do like.
Yeah, I think you're right on with that, and I think that's escaping from life versus moving towards something. I've seen, at least it's felt like to me, that there are more people that are less engaged with the world around them. That's been
Yeah,
a
yeah,
product of everything we've been through for the last couple of years.
yeah.
And is there anything that somebody maybe that's feeling that way, that that is in that escapism? Because there is a difference. There's a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
What advice could you give them to find that thing that makes their heart sing? Is there what kind of introspection can they go through to hopefully find that?
Well, I think you already hit the nail on the head. I think it's introspection. Look, there isn't an answer for everybody, in a linear way. But things I would encourage people to do is to slow down, to spend time reflecting on what went well, what didn't go well, what did they like, what did they not like. Begin to write down, and build up a pattern of themes, maybe in the back of their black book, so it's not part of their daily routine or activity, but they're building up a picture of how they want to be and where they want to be in the future. Too many people, in my humble opinion, are operating at 100 miles an hour, with an endless list of things to do, and they don't slow down and reflect and consider, and explore. And actually, quite often, what also that means is that they often are hard on themselves when actually they've achieved so much. So there's also an element in there about giving yourself a pat on the back, acknowledging the things that you've achieved and accomplished to build your own self-esteem, but also to give you clues and signposts as to where you might go in the future. And look, again, without overdoing this, just opening your mind and being curious and exploring the art of the possible. In this day and age, with social media and everything that is available to us, you can find out about anything that might whet your appetite, that might make your heart sing, that might energize you in ways that, in my generation, when I was a younger man, you didn't get that stuff. It was a little bit of, what did your family do for a living? What do the people around you do for a living? And you follow them. Yeah, nowadays I think the opportunities are wide and deep if you're up for exploring them.
Have you found a common denominator too of some of these top performers? Is there a sense of gratitude that they have for where they're at today? You've got to look forward and have those future goals, but I also think you have to have, you've touched on it a little bit, but appreciation for where you're at now. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Almost without exception, the most successful people tend to, in my opinion, have I said, they're humble, they have humility, they have an air of confidence, but not arrogance. Now, a lot of people will say that's because they've got to where they've got to. I don't really believe that. I think that's part of what got them to where they got to. In my opinion, and look, every one of us can find exceptions to the rule. What are the dangers of modeling people? Is if you go and look at iconic people in the world in order to replicate what they do, quite often the iconic people tend to be the outrageously outgoing people who are on a stage, who trip off the tongue. They're not necessarily the people to model. The people to model are sometimes those who are a little bit more introverted, a little quieter, aren't on a stage, but are doing incredible things. So sometimes spending the time to uncover and establish the people that you can really learn from, and the people that you can really find the key to the cupboard for you, is an investment worth making.
Yeah, and what I found as well, and you touched on this a little bit too when you mentioned that conference you were at in London. I've been amazingly fortunate, both in my former institutional career on Wall Street, and then since I've been in this end of the business in '07, there hasn't been a case that I can think of where, when I went to someone that was doing better than me or had more experience than me, if I asked them for advice, where they didn't help.
Absolutely right. Absolutely bang on the nail. So here's the thing. So successful people will listen to what you said then and believe that as a truth, and they will take that on board and copy and paste that into their world and begin to bang on the door. Other people will say, it's not like that in my state, or it's not like that in my world, and therefore what will happen is their behavior will follow the belief and they won't try. So when we interviewed these iconic people for our books, seven out of 10 people that we approached were absolutely up for it. Yeah. And there were pretty good reasons why the others, couldn't make it, didn't want to do it, and it didn't really matter. So reaching out to get help, to get insight, to get ideas, and sometimes, Brent, I often think you can learn from every experience. So you can learn from the good, you can learn from the bad, you can learn from the ugly. So you can learn what to do and what not to do. So if you explore an event, a book, a video, a TED talk, or whatever that might be, I believe that you can get something out of every one of them. And if you then, to your point earlier, you didn't use the phrase, but the aggregation of marginal gains, if you take a whole series of small things over a period of time, you might already be an Olympic bronze medal winner, but you can shift to silver. Yeah. So it's not about change who you are and transform yourself. It's about adding a series of very small, subtle changes that shift you forward, that distinguish you from others, that are the difference that makes the difference.
Definitely. And I want to clarify, when I say people that always offered help, they never did it for me. Because what you found is, particularly when you're younger, you're like, oh my gosh, can't they just tell me exactly how to do this? They would give you clues so you could figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to deprive you of that experience of achieving it on your own. And that's a big distinction there for sure, I think.
Look, and I really like that. And this is a dangerous one to say, but I'm going to say it. Women are better at asking for help than men. Interestingly, right? Yeah. So one of the things for any men listening to this is become better or become masters at asking for help.
And I would also add to this, and I'm kind of in this middle range. I'm going to turn 50 in about 6 months. So I'm you've accumulated a little bit of wisdom at this point, but it's not like I'm not 75 or 80 or 90 where you've got a lifetime of wisdom. But the one thing I would definitely suggest for any age range is, I've got a few people that are well into their 70s that every opportunity I have a cup of coffee with them. I just pick their brains in terms of what's happening in the world and some advice. And anyone younger that's listening to this in your 20s, I would really suggest that they find people that they can reach out to almost with that kind of a relationship, because what you'll find is that anyone that's done something and achieved something, they want to share it. it's woven into the fabric of who they are, and it's a way for them to sort of give back to a lifetime that in many cases there's been struggles and challenges, but overall it's been very good. And they're very willing to do that. So I would tell younger people, or even people my age or any age, don't be afraid to ask that question, in terms of, hey, can you give me some advice here? Because it's it's amazing how often the answer is yes, and you can learn so much from those interactions.
Absolutely, I couldn't, I couldn't agree more. And I think if people take one thing away from this call, it's about that insatiable curiosity,
Right.
and the bravery to ask the people that you might even imagine might reject you, because they won't. So go buy them a coffee, go buy them a glass of wine, go pick their brains and find out how they managed, how they coped, what their technique was, what their idea is, and again, without overdoing this and turning people into psychologists, sometimes you do want to dig a little bit deep, because you might find out what person's technique is, but what you really want to know is also what goes on in their head. How did they prepare? How did they think? How did they overcome the nerves or the demons or the challenges or the barriers that are in the way? And if you can then get those coping mechanisms that actually they internalize and you can't see, brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm guessing you probably detail some of them in this book here.
Yeah, probably. So let me give you a little. I'll give you a little one. I always quite like this. So there's a famous politician, very very British, called Winston Churchill. So
Oh, yes.
most people globally will know Winston
I have
Churchill.
a
Now,
painting of Churchill in my house, actually. What an
well,
all
there you
time,
go.
what a great man of the 20th century.
How cool is that? So
Yeah.
apparently, and this really surprised me when I read about this, but he sometimes was nervous when he had to present in front of huge audiences. So what his technique was, or what his coping mechanism was, is he would look at the audience and he would imagine that they had holes in their socks. Right? They had holes in their socks, and that would therefore put a smile on his face, and that would make him feel better and superior to the people that he was presenting to. Now that's a generational thing, and it's quite a traditional, formal thing. But if you go back to his time, mothers would tell their sons in particular, do not go out with holes in your socks, in
Right.
case you go run over. The ambulance driver's got to see what you're wearing. But it's that's what would go on in his head that would then make him smile. That's a coping technique. It's one of your examples of a small marginal activity that, when added to others, will then propel you forward.
Interesting. Well, I really want to thank you for taking time out of your evening. It's morning for me here, but evening for you there to have this conversation. And I'd encourage anyone, before I ask you to tell us all how to find you, but I just search Ian's information on Amazon. There's several books out there, but why don't you give the listening audience some other ways that they can find you and find your work?
Well, look, the easiest way is on LinkedIn. So it's Ian Mills, that's IAN. It's typically a Scottish name, but not a Scottish spelling. And then Mills is MILLS. So you will find me on LinkedIn. The company that I run is called Transform Performance International. You obviously know that particular book that we've been talking about as the Salesperson Secret Code. So search on any of those combinations and you'll find me on LinkedIn. You can also find my company's website. You can connect with me on there. But anyone who reaches out to me on LinkedIn, absolutely, I will connect with you. I'm an avid believer in building networks. If I can help any of you in any shape or form, whatever that might be, I am more than up for that. So that's what I would suggest. Oh, look, my email address is ian.mills@transformperformance.com. It's an incredibly long one. So it's ian.mills@transformperformance.com.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask you
Feel free to email me.
one more
Go on.
quick question, because when people are going to be listening to this, rather, it's going to be the beginning of 2023. And what I've found, where if I've gotten a lot of useful information that's been bombarded at me, like as I believe you shared with us today, I just try to sift it down to one thing and then try to implement that one thing for a little bit until it becomes a habit. For people that have listened to this and are intrigued by this idea of the right mindset to find success, whether it's in sales or any aspect of their life, what's one thing they can do starting in January or when they hear this conversation that can get them on that track?
Look, I have to really give you two, because I'm going to give you a behavior. So the behavior is master the art of being curious. The way you do that is to play games with yourself, and that tricks your mind. So, for example, if you have a client meeting for maybe an hour, in that hour, don't tell the client anything, only ask them questions. And then you can give yourself a high five in the car park, because you've focused entirely on them in terms of getting a deep understanding of what motivates them, what they want, what they need, and so on and so forth. And by the way, if you try and master that, you can embed your knowledge and information in the framing of the question. Yeah. So that's the behavior that I would focus on becoming an exemplar at. Here's a little offer for you. Anyone who buys the book, and by the way, this is not an advertisement to buy a book. Publishers of business books do not make money, right? So anyone who buys a book, if anyone would like to do a benchmarking questionnaire, then email me or connect with me on LinkedIn and request to do that. So we have an online benchmarking tool that will generate a 25-page report around where you are, what the gaps are, and what you might consider doing in order to move towards what the top performing salespeople are like. And I'm happy to do that free of charge.
And that would apply for any business?
That'll apply for any business. So I have to put a cap of 50 people on that.
Oh, deal. Yeah,
absolutely. For obvious reasons. But yeah, anyone who makes contact with me as a result of this podcast, then I'm more than happy to do that for them.
Well, it's a fantastic opportunity, I think, and I might take you up on that, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring it on. Yeah.
All right. And again, thank you so much. And I'll let you now get to that evening glass of wine in the beautiful United Kingdom.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, this has been fantastic. Ian, yeah, we are almost done. I just want to thank you so much for being a great guest on the podcast. Of course, Brent, I don't know how you find all these guests. I mean,
I just ask.
Yeah. There you go. Be curious, ask questions. And you did. Yeah. You asked and Ian answered. So I appreciate that. And of course, our last thank you always goes to the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Smart Money Simplified podcast with Brent Mekosh. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Brent comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And we humbly ask that you share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this actually does help others find the show. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at MP Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.